This is the Wolverine V3 by RAZER, a pro controller designed for Xbox and PC, which has caused a bit of a stir in the competitive gaming community. But to be more specific, this is the Wolverine V3 Tournament Edition. A wired-only version of the controller, which admittedly does lack some of the extra goodies that the V3 Pro version possesses, but more importantly, it does offer all the same features that makes the Wolverine V3 special, and critically, it comes in at half the price. In today's video, hopefully I'll give you all the information you need to help you decide if the Wolverine V3 is the controller upgrade you've been looking for. To do this, I'll be reviewing the controller in the usual four main categories, talking pros and cons in each, all before giving my overall thoughts at the end. At this point, I'll quickly mention that this controller was purchased by me with my own money, so all opinions in this video are, as always, my own. If you do find this video helpful, please remember the best way to help me make these kind of videos is by firstly liking the video, and of course by subscribing to the channel. I'd really appreciate the support. But with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. As mentioned in the intro, we will be reviewing this controller in four categories. Firstly, the price, and taking a look at what you get included with a purchase. Secondly, the design and key features, discussing the main selling points of the controller. Thirdly, customization and anything you can do to make the Wolverine V3 suit your playstyle. And then finally, the playtest. How is it under use? So let's roll right into it and talk about the price. And as I mentioned earlier, the V3 Tournament Edition comes in at a much more palatable price than the wireless Pro version. In the UK, it will set you back around £100, while in the US, $100, and in the EU, around €120. Now included with our purchase, we are supplied with this fairly heavy duty power cable, an instruction manual, and some really nice RAZER stickers. Taking a quick look at the USB-A to USB-C power cable, and while it isn't the usual braided cables that I do usually prefer, this is still a quality lead, and I have no worries about its durability. Which is pretty reassuring considering this is a wired controller we're talking about here. So in this area, the Wolverine V3 Tournament Edition is a reasonable package, but there is no denying that £100 is quite expensive for a wired controller. But luckily for us, the Wolverine comes loaded with some very impressive attributes. So let's move on to the next area of the review, the design and key features. Starting with the general aesthetics, and we have the same standard Xbox stick and button placement. A full blackout colour scheme and a largely matte finish. Not the most adventurous, but certainly a design that will appeal to most. Moving on to the rear of the controller, and we are immediately drawn to the four mouse click back paddles, which have a satisfying texture grip to help place your fingers correctly. This texturing also continues onto the side grips of the controller, but are lacking on the front of the pad as well as on the triggers and bumper buttons, which is pretty surprising. The side grips themselves are a little shorter and stubbier than a standard Xbox controller. We will talk about this a little bit later on, but generally I do enjoy the controller's form factor. Now let's talk about the standard features of the V3, beginning with a personal favourite of mine, Hall Effect thumbsticks, giving us snappier, more responsive aiming with the added security of knowing that we are not likely to suffer from stick drift, a must these days in my humble opinion. Next, we have to talk about the four programmable back paddles, which are able to be bound to basically any controller function you want. Placed lower down than on other controllers, it makes all four buttons more readily available, well, to me anyway. Now, I am usually a proponent of saying that two back paddles are just fine, but the placement here really feels more natural and makes me more likely to use. I've even bound my weapon swap to one of the lower paddles. The fact that they are mouse click is also awesome, fun and satisfying to use. We also have two additional buttons situated beside the bumpers. Now these are primarily aimed towards those that play claw. However, I can see them being useful regardless of how you hold your controller. A use case for this could be the pinging of an enemy in a shooter, for example. It also comes equipped with two stage trigger stops. Firstly, a standard linear trigger setting, and also a mouse click like hair trigger mode, which can really make a difference when stuck in them life or death moments. I'm actually very impressed with the triggers on the Wolverine, and they actually remind me of the triggers found on the Scuff Instinct Pro. However, it would have been preferable to see some texture grip on the triggers for added feel. Rounding out the features, we also have mecha tactile face buttons, which combines the speed of micro switches with the cushion presses you get from membrane buttons, leading to really nice actuation. There is also the unique raised D-pad, which strangely feels like a giant analog in some ways. I've actually been pleasantly surprised with how much I like it, considering it is the first time I've used a D-pad like this. It has the same clickable feeling as the face buttons and gives nice rotation, which I think could make it viable for fighting games. For the competitive gamer out there, the Wolverine V3 also touts a 1000Hz polling rate when played wired on PC, keeping it up to parity with some of the speedier controllers out there. I'm sure you'll agree that the RAZER Wolverine V3 offers most of the features you would like to see from a pro controller, but how does it hold up when it comes to customization? Well, unfortunately, there isn't too much to write home about in this section. Unlike its pricier Pro version, the Tournament Edition lacks the ability to swap out the thumbsticks, and also lacks the option to change faceplates, button placements or controller attachments as seen on other Pro gamepads. But luckily for us, we do have the ability to load up the RAZER Controller Companion app to get down and dirty with the controller settings, allowing us to create custom profiles, set thumbstick dead zones, bind our back buttons, perform updates, and generally configure the controller to suit our playstyle best. It is a little bit more bare bones than some controller apps I have used before, but it does still allow all the fine tuning you would really need. So with 3 review areas covered, the Wolverine Tournament Edition may seem a little pricey for a wired controller, but the plethora of pro features clearly make it a very attractive option. Although it would be nice to have seen a little bit more customization. But let's get into the most important part of the review, the playtest. How does it play? Firstly, in hand it feels right, robust, and it really does scream premium. I was a little bit skeptical of the shorter, stubbier side grips, as I do prefer the shape of the standard Xbox controller, but I have been pleasantly surprised with how well I've adapted to the form factor. As mentioned earlier, there is a textured finish on the side grips, but I would have preferred rubberized textured grips, similar to the Elite or the Scuff Instinct. I just feel it leads to a more secure fit, especially in them sweatier play sessions. The Hall Effect thumbsticks are precise and snappy. They are a little loose, but not a problem once I dialed in my settings. It's worth mentioning that Xbox control freaks fit the sticks just fine. The triggers are brilliant, satisfying to use, and in the hair trigger mode help me clutch up in some crucial moments. When it comes to the back paddles, I again had my doubts when I first picked up the pad. Usually controller designers often try to mask the addition of back paddles, either by melding them into the grip of the controller or by placing them in between where your fingers would usually be. The Wolverine takes a different approach here. They protrude from the controller and basically force your fingers to lay on all 4 of them. Now, it took me a little bit of time to get used to, but now the lower placement of them really is a great innovation, and as mentioned earlier, makes me more likely to use more than 2 paddles. In shooters like Halo Infinite, the V3 gives me everything I would need from a pro controller. But in my playtest, also playing third-person action games, I also enjoyed my time. It's definitely not as comfy a controller as an Elite Series 2 for example, but considering who this controller is targeting, I'm sure many will trade some comfort for proficiency. So with 4 review sections covered, what are my overall thoughts on the RAZER Wolverine V3 Tournament Edition? Well, to be blunt about it, this is quite simply the best controller I have used this year. It's packed with pro features, mouse click back paddles, hair triggers and 2 additional bumper buttons, looking to give the competitive gamer an edge, while Hall Effect thumbsticks offers the security of knowing you will never get stick drift. There is also a 1000Hz polling rate mode, again showing how competitively focused the controller is. It would have been nice to see a couple extra ways to customize the controller, and I also would have preferred to have seen some added texturing on the triggers as well as on the front grips of the controller. But for the price, if you can look past the fact that this is a wired only controller, then the Wolverine V3 Tournament Edition is a solid choice in the crowded controller space, and for me, will be my go-to controller for the foreseeable. But if you would like to see a more direct comparison between the V3 and one of the most popular pro controllers on the market, the Scuff Instinct Pro, well, I have a video right here putting them head to head, all to see which comes out on top. Take a look if you're interested. But for now, remember to let me know your thoughts on the Wolverine Tournament Edition. Is this the kind of controller you have been looking for, or is there anything putting you off a purchase? Remember to let me know in the comments below. But that's it guys, that's the video. Thanks so much for watching, and until the next time, I'll catch us.